has when they do something. And it is revealed in their actions, right? And so when I'm highlighting these things about you, Tyler, and that's the only, I hang out with you because I think you're a good leader,
I
right?
see. You know what it is, though?
And
Here,
you're a good,
yeah, but you know what it is?
yeah.
Have to give a lot of that credit to Sweden, actually, because a lot of this approach, I learned a lot by watching how the Swedes organize, and we had a little taste of it here on stage when Lisa from the Doberman agency, which was acquired by EY, and she's now the chief experience officer for EY, jumped up on stage and talked about it because somebody asked me a question like, well, Tyler, what would you do in this very touchy political dynamite situation? I said, well, I would do what my Swedish friends do and, sit everyone down and let's vote on it and, la da da. And, Nicholas on stage knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is a very understood formula and process and format that the Swedes have. And it works. And it works really well in this context of Clubhouse as well, which is we on stage should be really assume we are all equals, and that's what the Swedes do, notoriously so. And
Tyler,
yeah,
just quickly on,
yeah,
like, this room is the opposite to a walled garden, right? It's the opposite to, you get censored before you come up, your question gets rinsed. So what? Well, for newcomers, I've heard words like, I was so surprised I could get up, right? So, like, I just think, like, it's really nice the way you constantly recapitulate. This is a friendly stage, just come up. So I'm just shouting out that.
Yeah, honestly, I wish the format, Clubhouse had to build the structure into it, and it has its own inherent power dynamics. When you create a stage versus the audience, ideally, there wouldn't even be a stage. I wish there was a different mechanism, right? But, we're just dealing with the cards we were dealt here, but, yeah. So anyway.
So I wanted to add to that as well, because I didn't even realize that there's a competition, I think, going on right now for their creator economy or their creator program.
Who?
And that's somehow ending sometime soon. I don't think you're a part of that, but it's interesting because in the sense that it's a competition. And I was in a room the other day, just sort of offhandedly. I was just kind of looking for some place to hang out. And there was this large discussion about how inherently people on Clubhouse are trying to force the same paradigms that have persisted throughout. Like, let's make it the same kind of programming that we've seen on terrestrial television, on, the Netflix styles, or in other types of social media, and how that's not necessarily being, or not that it's not, but that we really don't have that here, and we really should allow it to be more free flowing. And that's one of the things I love about this room, that it isn't the natural, or that sort of like, it's not something that we've seen before. And I think that people should embrace that instead of fearing that change.
100%. Can I comment on that real quick? Yeah, that's a great observation, because
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this was actually my field of study in university, which was how technologies shape societies, even down to the home and individuals, and then across nations and globally. And every new technology shapes people, the anthropology of things in profound ways. And people have a tendency to want to refer back to the past. So, for example, when the iPhone first came out, all of the icons on the device looked like the physical things they were replacing. Like the phone icon looked like a phone, and the calendar looked like a calendar. We're using these, for example, on Microsoft Windows 95. They were still, or even later, they're still using the metaphor of a floppy disk. When you're in Microsoft Word and you have to save the document, the icon to save is a floppy disk, and people, we don't use floppy disks anymore. New people are like, what the hell does this icon mean? It's like, well, that's a floppy disk. It's the thing we used to save all of our data onto. And they're like, well, I don't know what that is. So it's not even an appropriate metaphor anymore. My point is that as platforms evolve, they're actually opportunities to try new things. And film is my favorite example. I mentioned it yesterday during the live stream, which is when film as a medium was starting, the reference point was photography, and people were trying to replicate photography. So you had the camera was staying always very static, and people were moving around, and you see all these old black and white grainy early movies, right? When film was just starting, and the cameraman, it never occurred to the cameraman to move the camera the way that we do today in Hollywood, right? That was actually, it took a lot of time to figure out, like, that's the real art of cinematography and of making films, is all of these dramatic camera movements, which was, but in the early days, it was actually, no, you just put the camera down and everyone else moves around it, which today seems silly. Like, of course, you would never make a movie that way. But we're starting to see the same things now with, Clubhouse, where people are like, no, let's just treat this room like it's a Zoom call. It's like, well, we don't have to. And the real beauty of this room is going to be when it's something much more interesting than a Zoom call. And, let's consider and stretch the capabilities of the platform. And that's why I said, Cheryl lives in Japan and I lived in Japan for years. And one of the things I love about the Japanese is they are quite good at accidentally stretching and innovating, because they don't have the same preconceived notions that we have in the West about things necessarily. So when game shows go over to Japan, they get reimagined into a whole new, beautifully more, they add new colors to the rainbow in the way that they interpret what a soap opera should be, what a pop song should be, what fashion should be. And so I always take my cues from, Japanese culture often, because they have an interesting way of stretching new technologies and mediums beyond what we do in the West, given our routine of things. Yeah, Victoria knows exactly what I'm talking about, because yeah. And what they're going to do with VR is going to be, trust me, a lot of the most interesting stuff in VR is going to come out of Japan, like, guaranteed. So
it's already there.
Yeah,
there's a lot of hackers that have been posting their HoloLens programs and actual holograms, like just from a regular computer monitor. They have these 3D holograms that pop up. It's crazy. It's just like not widespread in Japan yet, but people are out here doing crazy AR stuff in Japan.
Yeah. So anyway, but the same in Clubhouse. I said it would be interesting if there's Clubhouse team members who could understand Japanese and go into those Japanese rooms, because I bet you they're doing some really innovative uses of the room in ways that nobody's really considered yet. For example, I was talking with Justin yesterday, and Cal and I have discussed, and we've even said it openly here many times. I really feel we need, and somebody should do it, and I would love to do, and let's all do it, an official courthouse of Clubhouse, a Clubhouse courthouse, where we can, we on stage are the jury, and people bring in their beefs to be settled, and they could be financial or not, or even trivial or whatever. But that could be a really interesting use case that could evolve into something, actually has the potential to evolve into something ridiculously powerful and useful and game changing. But and also could be very entertaining. I mean, it depends on the purpose and the intent of how you want to take it. But that's just an example of like non-obvious use cases. I think it's very obvious, and I've said from the first week I got on, the American Idol format is inevitable. The Clubhouse has talent. Talent competitions is totally inevitable. There's a lot of,
you could PTR the scores too, right? We could PTR the scores of all the judges
and the sports companion rooms. Like we did our geek companion room yesterday for the Google I/O event, and just for everyone who's now, the room has doubled in the last 10 minutes. So thank you to everyone who joined us for that. I had a blast myself. I don't know about you all, but I thought that was a lot of fun. And but I mean, I can't imagine that sports if I was a sports fan, I would be doing the same. I want to be joining, with a group of friends, who, get together in a room and really go into the details of, this particular match, and with people who, so I have to imagine that's going to be a huge use case in the future. And, there's all kinds, like I talk about I have to imagine they're doing this. the embeddability to embed this room into a blog post, specifically as a replacement for the comment section at the bottom, so that people can talk about the article, like the UFO video that I tweeted out. Why isn't there a permanent room embedded at the bottom of that video for people to talk about that video? That room would be going berserk for a very long time. So anyway, yeah. But back to the initial point of the platforms evolve, the use cases will evolve. Twitter we watched Twitter evolve over time, and YouTube evolve, and all the platforms evolve. And there will always be people who have difficulty allowing themselves to stretch and welcoming the new possibilities of what the new platform opens, because they want to refer back to the power dynamics they're familiar with, because they understand them, or they've mastered them, or they're more comfortable in them. And but the exciting part is, as tech has evolved, since really the boom around the 80s with the bulletin boards. And that's why I love that Dr. Francine Hardaway has been joining us lately, because she was one of those folks that was, I was quite young at the time when that was starting in the 80s, but she's seen it all since, the early dial, really early dial-up days. And it's been an interesting evolution over time. And I often think about the kids who are joining, like who was that gentleman, the young guy from ASU that joined us yesterday, right before the live stream started?
Was it Corey?
Yes. And
Yeah,
he
inspired me so much.
He was so fantastic, right? And he comes in with kind of virgin eyes in a way, and like, hey, I've got this VR lab at my university, ASU, and what's this all about? And it's like, man, he's the future. You are the future, man. And I thought Michael's input was so spot on. Like, you've got that fantastic VR lab, like live in that thing, master that thing, because that thing is a portal into the future, and you've got access to it in a way that very, very few people do at the moment. And, before long, he'll be, an old person talking about the early days of VR in a way that was going to, his kids will have a hard time swallowing.
Yeah. And Tyler, talking about portals and VR, I noticed that Victoria wasn't on stage yesterday when we talked about the Gucci going into Roblox. I don't know if...
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
It would be lovely
hold
to
on
hear
one
your
second.
perspective.
One second, just Tyler.
Yeah.
I wanted to segue just for fun. PTR my avatar. Segue because you talked.
Let's see.
Floppy
Oh
disk?
yeah, that's
5 1/4 inch.
Yeah,
You need a 9-inch disc to be old school. You need a 9-inch disc.
Sorry, that was the only thing I could find.
yeah, but for
Mini disc?
those who don't remember, that is what started the whole thing right there. That little picture, and there's that red part is a piece of paper that's what we call the sleeve to protect, because the magnetic disc inside of that little the black part is actually it's like a record that slips inside of that red paper sleeve, and you need the paper sleeve because underneath the red paper sleeve there's a magnetic
tape.
Yeah, like almost like a tape, but it looks like a disc. Yeah,
Disc.
and the computer would write ones and zeros onto that little disc, like a piece of tape. And you needed to protect it because you could touch it with your bare fingers. It was exposed, believe it or not. It almost sounds.
What was the memory on that disk, Tina?
1.44 megabytes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
One really bad photo.
Right.
One really bad photo.
And then they came out with double-sided discs, which was 2.88 megabytes on one disc, and it blew people's minds. Oh my God, we can hold 2 megabytes now on these discs.
But one second, did she make a notch on that disc so you could expand it?
Excuse me, seriously, this is a geek room, and you don't remember that was 720K on each side.
Yes, 720.
You could use a notcher to actually make it double-sided.
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
Seriously, I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
She made a notch. If you look carefully, she has a notch on it.
On the side, yeah.
Side.
Johan, do you remember what the 9-inch disc capacity was?
Yeah, they were 200 first, and the next version, I think they were 320. I still in the cellar has half-inch and quarter-inch tapes for Vaxen and Sun 470s and 420s.
Does
I
anybody
actually have a whole stack of Sparks in the cellar.
Is
I started
old enough to remember the blue
using
screen
paper
of death?
tape on a teletype machine. A little older than you guys.
Yeah.
And it had each 8-bit word were 8 holes punched across the width of the paper tape. I still have them, by the way, in a box somewhere with some of my high school programs on it. But that was the fun times.
Does anybody remember the blue screen of death?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Of
yeah.
Sure, of
course.
course.
Yes, it said system failure on it, right?
Well, now you have the Waymo autonomous car driving recklessly around town, which is kind of the white car of death. It's like this when the system fails and the autonomous car goes berserk. It's a more profound version of the blue screen of death now.
You could do 12 single-spaced pages in Word before it came up with the blue screen of death because you used all 640K of your memory.
Yeah.
Literally, we're dead because it was all gone.
Yeah, we did do a really fun experiment back in 2006, I think it was. We took a Pentium 4 with 1 gig of RAM and actually installed those 6.22 Windows 4 3.11 and those Office 4.2. The thing the thing booted after the post. It took 1.5 seconds for it to open a 50 kilobyte large Word document. How long does it take to start Word today without loading the operating system? You weren't done speaking.
All right. Well, we have to end our journey down nostalgia lane here for the sake of everyone younger than 30. You got some news, Dan?
Bitcoin environmental stuff.
Okay.
How can't beat that, right?
Okay.
So this is from Bitcoin.com, I guess, which I don't normally read, but it was through Twitter. ARK Invest.
Yes.
Bitcoin mining net positive to the environment. Concerns of BTC's energy consumption are misguided. Got to remember this is coming from Bitcoin.com, of course. Following concerns raised by Tesla CEO Elon Musk about Bitcoin's energy consumption, global asset manager ARK Investment Management explained that the concerns are, quote, misguided, unquote. Referring to its research using real-world data, the investment firm emphasized that the impact of Bitcoin mining could be a net positive to the environment. And then they go on to explain what I was talking about, I guess, several days ago, that if you use it, so you need to build lots of renewable energy, right? And if you want the energy to be base load, you got to overbuild 4 or 5 times the amount. But that means you have energy a lot of the time. So how do you all pay for it? So if you could mine Bitcoin only then using excess energy, renewable energy only, well, that would then help subsidize the build out of all this renewable energy. And that would be true. And that would be positive for the environment, like they're saying here. But what they're not saying here is what they're doing today, of course, is not helpful for the environment because people are using fossil fuel quite a bit. So they're trying to make a future thing sound like a good thing today, and they're sort of both true. It's bad today, but could be good in the future if we do it right. So that's what this article is about.
I just found the article and I retweeted it, or I tweeted it to the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, which you all can find by clicking on the title of this room. And please, you'll see the Tech News Club and all the upcoming events, which are now.
Ben had an amazing discussion on that issue of energy, and he was working through a scenario on a Bitcoin. Is Ben here? Oh, hang on. Yeah, he's down there. Yeah, interesting if he wants to comment on that. But he drove an amazing discussion yesterday in a Bitcoin room about the scenarios of, take the worst case. And then there was a whole, he was actually educating the Bitcoin community. I sat through my lunch, walking my dog, listening to him. So if he comes on sometime, maybe he's busy right now.
David just sent a Bitcoin related article. You want to do this one, David?
Sure. Yeah, so actually the newest thing on the ground here is it's actually legal. It has always been, so anything in China, if it's not illegal, it's legal, if you get that logic, to trade cryptocurrency on a personal level, not on a company level. And the latest thing that's interesting is we're getting state sort of notifications in Chinese. I can't find the English version of it, so I sent the South China Morning Post version, which is probably the closest thing I could find, that they're going to start banning actually the
David, if you
trading.
look at the if you look at the tech news around the world feed yesterday, or Tyler, if you look at it, I posted it yesterday. You guys have the English version there. It's all three releases from the Chinese government that banned it.
So the article from South China Morning Post that we just David shared and I retweeted, the headline is China sends another warning on cryptocurrency risks amid wild fluctuations. State-backed financial associations have warned their members to stay clear of any financing activities related to popular cryptocurrencies. Statement comes amid recent price volatility and as Beijing seeks to draw a distinction with its own sovereign digital currency.
That's the interesting bit, the CDBC.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well,
amazing.
Convenient, I guess, that Bitcoin is being volatile so that they can remind people to stay away from it and just focus on our state currency, would you please?
Yeah, I just took an English article too.
And then you could extrapolate that perhaps China asked Elon to make wild comments
Tyler,
about Bitcoin.
There's one thing that's very interesting there. There's one thing that's very, very interesting there. So if you remember some of the analysis that we were doing here a couple of weeks ago around Binance, and without creating any propaganda, and I'm not trying to, this is just a little bit of synthetic analysis. But if you recall, with all those statements about China using Bitcoin as a weapon, and Binance initially operating onshore in China, which was the world's largest Bitcoin exchange for ages, but yet the Chinese saying for ages that it was banned, then Binance moving its operations to the United States, and at that point China was okay with cryptocurrencies all of a sudden, and lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, once Binance's main operations moved towards the United States, all of a sudden it's illegal again. I find that a
Well,
little
actually,
interesting.
let me provide a little insight on that. So what
Please
actually
go ahead.
happened was the two biggest exchanges at the time in China and in the world, really, at the time, because China had such a big presence in cryptocurrency, were Huobi and OKEX. And then on the 4th of September 2017, China banned all ICOs and then banned exchanges as well. And during that vacuum that was left by Huobi and OKEX, Binance sort of very in the gray, in the dark gray almost, operated in a way where they could take on Chinese local currency deposits in exchange for cryptocurrency. And that was when they quickly by filling that void, they quickly built up their presence. And when the Chinese regulators took notice of that, CZ actually had to flee to Japan. And then from Japan, he was getting sort of a lot of pressure from the Japanese as well, as the Chinese are trying to extradite him. So then he went over to Malta, and then that was a sort of a whole mess there. So he eventually made a deal to get landed back into Shanghai. But before they let him come back, the Chinese government made actually 2 high-profile arrests and raids into the Binance office before finally coming to an agreement and letting him land back in China.
So is there more crypto-related Bitcoin news before we go on into other topics? Somebody want to jump in?
I was just going to ask Dan a quick question to
Go ahead, Ben.
corroborate something, if that's right. It's Ben here. How are you doing? Thanks for that, Cal. I'm not sure that's quite. I think you're overblowing it, but I'll explain why later. Dan, is it true that there are sources of greenhouse gases leaking into the atmosphere in the Earth in remote places or otherwise that could be burnt in such a way that they produce energy, and the net effect of that would be positive if you could get to them and economically burn them? Is that true or untrue, or do you not know?
Well, there's certainly. Permafrost is melting. I mean, there is some leakage of greenhouse gases from the earth. Well, there's always some anyway, by the way, in general, but the ones that we're worried about are like permafrost and what's called clathrate or frozen methane in the oceans. If those come out, it's kind of game over. if it comes out in large quantities. But so far that hasn't happened. So yes, there's all over the place, but it's so diffuse, it's very hard to capture, right? That's the problem. If you could somehow concentrate it, but that's very, very difficult.
Okay, that's cool.
I think the quick answer is no.
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
the high level, not absolute no, but in general, it's just very hard to gather that kind of stuff together.
It's very diffuse. Thanks, Dan. That's cool.
Tyler,
yes.
I have another Bitcoin news.
Yep. Go for it.
I just tweeted it to you. Coordinated attacks to stop online investors swindle, defrauding victims for approximately 30 million euro. And this is a news from the 12th of May. I just found it from Eurojust, which is the European Justice Department. There have been a coordinated thing within Europol to actually defraud people of 30 million euro. You can, when they retweet it, you can read it yourself. Apparently, they have found, and they were doing everything you can imagine. They were using phone scams. They had investment scams. They had Ponzi schemes. They have it all. There's a lot to dive into here if you want to go down my rabbit hole. You are done speaking.
We'll save that for a deep dive room, perhaps. At someone other crypto news happening at the moment, other than the fact that Bitcoin is, what's the current price? Look, I just saw a report that it broke below 40,000.
Tyler,
yes,
I think
it's 37.
Tyler, I think Michael Sawyer, he should have listened to our prediction. I think we made this call about 4 weeks ago. I think 6 weeks ago. Right?
What are you still at 18 or 12 to 18?
I lowered to between 9 and 12,000. I think it's coming.
Within what period, Karen?
Good job.
Within what period?
Last time when I did make the call, I did say between 8 to 12 weeks. So I think we are into the 4th week. So yeah, another 6 to 7 weeks, we will see. We should the trend
9 to 12.
Yeah.
So far you've been right. So far you've been right.
I'm going to put a different prediction.
We need to use it. We need to put some heads in there.
Before anyone jumps in here, let me just make something clear here. So look, I love Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is great, but you do need to start. When someone make a prediction about Bitcoin is going lower, it doesn't mean I hate Bitcoin. It's just that understanding what's going on in the macroeconomics. I think there are a couple of times we highlighted something about I know Ben, a couple of times you raised a point about how much the global central banks are printing. I just tweeted something just now. If you look at the foreign buying of the U.S. debt, that's stopped, right? Most of the recent buying of the U.S. debt and all this printing money is being by central banks. So I just put a chart there. I think it's very fascinating because what's happening now is that the foreign countries stopped buying U.S. debt literally some time ago. So we have, in order for the recovery to take place, they had to, stop printing. That's the first thing. Second thing is something amazing is happening, that the fact that foreigners have stopped buying the debt, but the amount of money that's coming into the country, the capital is flowing into the country. It's a record level, $16 trillion. So as long as they keep the dollar steady, the exchange rate, I think so they will be aware that they will be able to suck that liquidity out of the system. So I think that's why all of this playing in, because they're going to be very, very. I think we talked about this specifically, how the regulators will make sure that this doesn't feed into some kind of dollar crisis. I think that's what we are seeing globally.
Kieran,
I want to highlight something Kieran does. One second, Ben. I just want to highlight something Kieran does for the audience just a little bit. One of the things that Kieran does, I've noticed, is, he clearly understands the space, right? He's a professor at Imperial College and understands the space. And he makes a call on a price of something which does not say the thing itself is bad, right? Which is the same when somebody says, I don't, this is what I think about, Apple, right? Apple stock price. So there's a very big difference between the price of something at a certain point in time, because there are so many dynamics to that, right? And your underlying thesis of how you think about the thing itself. So, for example, you might think, Tesla is the game-changing company for the next 20, 30 years, but you might think at this point in time, the price is you're going to get a correction. So that's what Kieran's doing. Am I correct, Kieran? I just want to make sure that you are represented really well there.
Absolutely. I think we're going through a period, guys. Look, the inflations are popping up everywhere. There is a way. Look, I don't think any of us in this room wants the world to go into, another 2008 style crisis, right? So I think, we all agree on that. I think that's what's happening. Central banks are slowly, paying attention to all of these bubbles, and I think we are seeing, and that's how it is. When you're full time, I traded 18 years in Wall Street, day in, day out, and you've seen these things, and that's how I see it. So absolutely right, Kala. I see temporary. Long term, absolutely, it could be 100,000, it could be a million. Who knows, right? We don't know. But short term, based on all these macroeconomic indicators, short term the trend is down. I think it's going towards $15,000. That's my call.
And Kieran, can you comment just briefly on the influence of the central bank digital currencies on the reduction over the weeks? Do you think or is that longer term effect?
So I don't know if you guys noticed that, instead of going too detail into it, recently Bank of England set up a committee, right? Set up a little. They're having dialogue with the various stakeholders. But then again, people again, the crypto. One of the things with this crypto, they jump on people, right? Bank of England started this dialogue about 4 years ago. It's not something that they published recently. They've been having this dialogue with all of the various stakeholders about the digital currencies and at what form it will take place. So I think without jumping too much into it, how much the digital currency is making impact on recent price moves. I think all of the central banks have been doing that. UK, especially, I don't know if you know Mark Carney, when he was a very vocal, right? Now, where has he ended up? One of the things you guys need to realize, a lot of these central bankers, they have a 5-year, 6-year term. They all will end up in a private sector, right? So Mark Carney, just before he left Bank of England, he made a big woo-ha about cryptocurrency. I think he joined one of the Square, I'm not sure what it is, Square or one of them. They used to list cryptocurrency as soon as he joined, just before he joined. I'm sure that behind the scene, they probably went through the hiring process. They stopped taking Bitcoin and Ether.
Square, Kieran, Square.
They stopped taking crypto, and then a couple of months later, they say that Mark Carney will be joining the board. So the thing is, guys, like I think we saw that with David Cameron as well, right? So as soon as so they're all going to end up in a private sector. So I think it's very important to pay attention to how the Square, they have investment in, for example, in Tether. So they invested heavily in Tether and some stable coins. So the directions in a lot of these companies where these central bankers or some of these guys who are making the policy decisions now, it's a very important cue in how the space is getting disrupted. So so the digital coin is coming, but just pay attention to what are these like what Mark Carney and what the Bank of England has been saying. I think it's a very important.
Just briefly, Kieran, I wasn't going to jump in to disagree. I've just pinned a tweet that I did over a month ago. I came on here and said that with 95% certainty, the price of Bitcoin at the end of the year will be somewhere between 20,000 and 200,000 US dollars. I have no clue. If you look at the chart on the tweet, it's a log chart price-wise over a 5-year period. I drew 2 lines on the 24th of April. One was it pulling back to around the 20,000 line, and one was it rocketing up to hundreds of thousands. And it's complete guesswork as to which way it's going to go, because if you zoom out even further and look at the only fundamental that really drives the Bitcoin price, one of the most important fundamentals is this halving of the difficulty. And there's other tweets I put out that talk about when that is and how that works. And it's complete guesswork as to where we are in this, what we call 4-year difficulty halving cycle. I mean, I'm for one super excited that it's going this way, because this is giving me significant buying opportunities. We're reorganizing our finances as a family because of this completely now. So this is really exciting. But yeah, I agree with your short-term.
Ben, one of the amazing techniques around the world is that we are very dynamic on the way we talk about Bitcoin. Unlike other rooms, we are very following day to day, and we are actually updating our thought process. We are feeding it through the pricing point. I think it's amazing that
exactly.
We are not
if I can just add to what you're saying, and me and you are often on the opposite side of the debate. On this particular side of the debate, I'm completely at par with what you're saying. And to further extend it a little bit, I actually think we're in for a much worse crisis than what we saw in 2008. When it hits exactly, I'm not sure, but over the next 2 years, I'm quite sure.
In terms of a general financial crisis, I agree.
A lot of the points, one point we always reiterated in this tech around the world for the last 2 months, there's 1,000 people owns about 7% of the Bitcoin. You might jump on me, but now I don't know if you heard Elon Musk. He said he just realized is very centralized than he realized previously, meaning that a lot of the exchanges are the biggest whales, and you just don't know how they are playing with the governments, like for example China, all of that stuff. So I think it's all a bit silly. They knew all along, and they just took it for a ride, and Tesla made some money. I think they're going to be surprising is that because the regulatory, he can't reveal that whether he sold the Bitcoin or not, which is something is going to be revealed, right? Because he cannot say I'm going to sell and front run the market, then he'll get in deep trouble. So I'm sure that he got rid of all of the Bitcoin. So the point is that a lot of the manipulations, a lot of people did actually manipulate the market. So the most important thing to remember is that there is about 1,000 people owns about 60 to 70% of the bit. That is a fact, guys. So it is a very centralized system.
I can tell you what the exact price of Bitcoin is if you want.
Right now, yeah, it's 39,783.
Actually, it's 39,789. I just bought 1,000.
Yeah,
so.
Depending on which exchange you buy it from. Yeah. So
this is why proof of work is important over proof of stake to some of the conversations yesterday, because that centralization of the ownership can have an influence on, and I'm not sure that's true. I think that you need to do some very careful chain analysis to see exactly where the distribution is, and it can be done because of the public nature of the ledger. But the fact that the small number of people own a large amount of it, they can move the price, but they can't shift the fundamentals.
Hey Ben, can I just ask a question here? There's proof of stake, and we're not going to deep dive. Some coins right now that are doing proof of space. So, like Chia, for instance.
Yeah, we did touch on that yesterday. I mean, I think that just maps to proof of stake, though, roughly, because the space costs money, costs fiat. So you have to spend. It's just a slight variation on proof of stake. Where the
energy-wise, it's better though. Right.
Yeah, but you don't. As we said yesterday, you don't want it to be good energy-wise, because a difficult currency, something that is difficult to mine, like gold. Gold mining is the most crazy exploit, right? It's a fantastic currency, or was until technology came along as a better option. It was very weird how these people spent billions and trillions of dollars making big holes in the ground with a huge amount of machinery and manpower, only to take that stuff out of the ground, take it across the country, and put it in another hole in the ground, which is protected by armed guards and it has a big metal door. But there's it's a hard currency. It's difficult to increase the supply of gold, and if you're going to make a currency hard, it's going to have to use a lot of something to harden it. And energy is the only thing that I can think of that is actually a real scarce commodity and can't be given back once it's been turned into heat. The thermodynamics of when you do some work and it becomes heat, it's lost as waste. You can't kind of get it back. You could take all those hard drives, reformat them, and use them for something else, and they would still be valuable. When you mine Bitcoin, you are wasting is heat, all of the energy, 100% goes to heat immediately. And then you digitize that value into something that can be sent down a tiny copper wire or to a satellite link to anywhere else in the world. So now at any point on the surface of the planet, you can extract terawatts of power from some intermittent or otherwise unused energy source. You can encapsulate it into a form that can be sent by satellite, can be sent by radio, can be sent through a small copper wire. You just can't send value any other way like that. That's what's fascinating about it, and starts to really shift my mindset around energy distribution.
Unless
can you desalinate water?
Can I add to this also, though? Like as everyone's pointing out here on the stage, is that there's a lot of factors and layers that impact the directions that Bitcoin and all of the crypto go. And this is, you're saying, there's the energy aspects, as Kieran's saying, there's the market aspects, there's the control aspects. And my understanding with Elon's, I'm going to call bogus on his thinking that it's, trying to say that it's he just realized the environmental impacts. It's the upcoming tax impacts, and that they claimed, Tesla's got Bitcoin on the books as a digital asset, and that wasn't a normal way of classifying. Like that doesn't really fall within the normal classifications of digital assets, and they're going to get hit with some taxes, and that's another layer that hits here. So there's just a lot of varying layers and regulatory schemes that impact these things that it's really hard for people to get their hands around. That's probably why you have 1 billion rooms here where everyone's discussing it from different aspects.
Okay, those are fighting words.
Yet again, I'm a fucking genius. There we go.
And I'm having Bitcoin overload, overdose. I'm ODing on crypto.
Move on.
Yes, Bitcoin overdose. We gotta save it for the deep dive rooms, which Ben does and Amay does masterfully, and you can go for hours and hours deep into the black holes of the crypto universe, the blockchain universe. Blockchain black holes. That would be a great name for the room, perhaps. The other news that people want to jump into, because I'm getting a nice.
I have a med tech.
Do it.
If you would
Go ahead.
be
Go for
interested
it,
in
Hassam.
hearing.
Yeah.
So this is Hyson talking about med tech. As you've probably been following, as we've had technology surges in our computers and our phones and our and watches have become much more sophisticated, there has been a concern about the magnets that are actually in these devices.
Magnets?
And it was, the magnets that are in these devices. And they're
Magnets?
Nets, yes.
Magnets, okay.
And so what ended up happening is a bunch of cardiologists back in January reported that they were concerned about sort of the iPhone 12 and the fact that these magnets could actually impact people's defibrillators. And people's defibrillators are also controlled by magnets. And then in March, Apple basically announced that they were like, yes, there's a possibility that the magnets that we put into our products could impact magnetic devices, much like your defibrillator. And just recently, the FDA this past week basically announced a public warning that these magnets in some of the cell phones and smartwatches that consumers use could possibly impact the functioning of their pacemakers and other implanted devices. And although they say that the incidence is low and there have been no reported events where people's defibrillators have been impacted, they are just making consumers aware that as the technology increases, that this ability of magnets to basically turn off these devices does put them at risk for potential cardiac events. And so that was one of the things I wanted to share.
Thank you for that.
There's the second headline.
I want to tweet that out.
Go ahead.
Poppy, if you could. Oh, Poppy found it. Never mind. As usual. I just retweeted it.
There is a second headline.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That would be really good for your jury, that came actually out of Goldman Sachs, which basically asked in a biotech research report, is curing patients a sustainable business model? And this report basically talks about how as biotech basically gets better at gene therapy and pioneering treatment cures, that this is not a sustainable business model for someone like Goldman Sachs. And so they basically had this conversation called the Genome Revolution, and this was brought up by one of the analysts who basically wrote that although the proposition carries tremendous value for patients and society, it could represent a challenge for genome medicine developers looking for sustained cash flow. And so there is this debate whether or not it's a good idea to be solving these issues, because a lot of these issues are multi-billion dollar industries, such as hemophilia, which is actually a 9 to 10 billion worldwide industry. And so this really does ask the question that as we are sort of developing technology, like what is going to sort of take precedence? Is the precedence towards our humanity? Or is there also some capitalistic nature in keeping disease fruitful? And those were the two headlines.
Thank you. Awesome. Brilliant. And let's see here. Someone else got something to share?
I can tell some lighter news.
Okay.
Tyler,
go for it,
and
Ransom.
something which maybe you are interested.
Okay.
One of the biggest arenas in Stockholm, so Ericsson Globe, is being renamed as Avicii Arena.
Oh, is this a joke?
No. The news is everywhere now. You can just search for ABC. I'm seeing that in. Just search for Globe and Arena Avicii. I can send you the link. So this is from today.
I'm Googling.
It's together with his father's foundation, Avicii Foundation.
You're exactly right. Wow. So
supporting the people who are having mental health problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is really interesting.
So it's a very good news.
Yeah.
Very good news.
So it's actually like one of the biggest arenas in Sweden is this huge dome. It's a big sports arena. It's where Metallica plays when they come to Sweden, and huge artists and Avicii, who's a hometown. He's from Stockholm, and so the name of it is Ericsson Globe. To give you an idea of how big it is, Ericsson is like the big legacy tech company in the Nordics. And now the name has been changed from Ericsson Globe, which has been known forever, and it's so big you can see it pretty much from anywhere in Stockholm. And they're now calling it Avicii Arena. Wow, wow. Tim, I don't know that Tim would like that. Actually, it would. Interesting. I'm kind of getting a little.
Nice legacy though,
Yeah,
Tyler, and a
yeah.
real nice shout out to
Well,
people who are going through hard times, huh?
Yeah,
And like a validation that everyone has hard times, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a living monument to his impact, which gosh. Anyway, it's a little too personal for me at this point, but yeah, we'll anyhow. I'll find out very soon because I have friends who are very senior at Ericsson, and Ash, Avicii's partner, is my dearest personal friend. So we'll very soon get the very deep inner workings of how that came about, and why Ericsson. I guess the name Ericsson was leasing the name on it, like big brands do when they brand football arenas. And maybe the name was expiring, and then I'm just imagining, but we'll find out very soon exactly how the deal went down. But anyway, thank you for that, Ren. Just that, as you said, it is kind of bittersweet, and yeah, thank you. I hadn't heard about that. So, other news?
As I don't have any ties to China, I could actually say two Chinese newses
Okay.
that came out.
Yeah, do it.
So one is basically Huawei's product manager has moved on to automotive division, and he's going to focus on the EV products. And in the article actually goes into detail about why he's doing this, because they said that due to the 4 embargoes from the U.S. government, right? Trade embargoes. So they are losing a lot of products in terms of their revenue from their products, the phone products and the internet products. So now they're going to try to make that money up through EV vehicles. That's the plan. And the other one is about Apple, right? There's been a concern raised by the securities company. I actually tweeted those out to you that has reclaimed the net. So it's basically they defend free speech and individual liberty, and they've reported that the new reports allege Apple's compromises iCloud security by providing encryption keys to Chinese government. Apple is accused of contradicting its stance on privacy.
Yep.
And as we know that,
was this the New York Times that you found, that one?
This one was through the Reclaim the Net. It's basically a securities agency. It's still a reputable source for news. I actually sent you that.
It stems from the New York Times did obviously some real deep digging on Apple in China, and they wrote multiple pieces yesterday on the topic. It was kind of too big to put into one piece, everything. And they were saying exactly that their stance in the U.S. of, your data, your privacy, and singing that whole song, doesn't hold up internationally, of course, because China doesn't allow that, of course. And, they do whatever China wants in the end, basically, was the synopsis of their findings was whatever the government wants, China does, no problems. Thank you, sir. Can I have another? So it's, that's just, you don't really have a choice. I think Apple, but interesting. It's like, is Apple strong enough to get any in the battle between Apple and the CCP? Who's going to win? If it really comes down to a showdown of Apple staying or leaving, and I think the CCP can't flex, can't bend, because then that starts a domino chain they don't want to deal with. And Jack Ma went through the exact same thing, where Jack Ma kind of pushed them a little bit, and they said, "Yeah, not exactly. That's not how it's going to work, cowboy. Not in this town." And next thing you know, Jack Ma is nowhere to be found. So I think Apple saw the writing on the wall, and I think all the powerful people in China, especially the tech giants, all know who the boss is, and not to even try, because now they're all being fined billions of dollars. And now they're all getting cracked down on anti-competitive, and they're interesting how that all happened immediately after the Jack Ma incident.
Perhaps also begs a question, like with iMessages, right? We have direct communication with all the other iOS users. So what about people who iMessage us from within the firewall of China? what happens,
Yeah,
how, would it be like a
let's try it.
WhatsApp sort of
You
trial?
have David on stage. David, you do iMessage in Beijing? Did he jump off stage? So we'll find out when he gets back. We can try and do an iMessage with him, see what happens. But just from the user side. But I imagine on the data side, clearly China gets access to that. I wonder if they only get access to the Chinese citizens' communications, but not the other side. It's kind of a weird question. I've got some other Chinese news here while we're on the topic. China bans financial payment institutions from cryptocurrency businesses, as we were alluding to earlier. That's like the big, strong headline from Reuters. China, Baidu beats quarterly revenue estimates on cloud and AI. That's basically China's Google, like their search engine is Baidu. And another one of the big tech companies gets fined for misleading pricing on their food delivery platform. And then Eight Roads Ventures, which is Fidelity, which is a huge player, led a big round in a new Beijing-based mental health content platform in China, which is interesting to see that. And then Sequoia also doing something in Chinese food delivery robot maker called Pudu Tech bags funding from Sequoia and Meituan. And Meituan is the biggest food delivery company in China. So this is I want to dig into this one a little bit. It's and I'll tweet it out. It says Chinese food delivery robot maker Pudu Tech gets funding from Sequoia and Meituan, which means I want to invest myself, because if Meituan is investing in something to do with Chinese food delivery, they are the biggest player in food delivery, but they're doing it physically with humans and motorbikes. And this is a Chinese food delivery robot. And if Meituan and Sequoia are involved, that's all you need to know, that company is going to be booming. So robotic food delivery is now going to happen in a big way in China. That's my takeaway from that. But I'll tweet out the article. It's a Shenzhen headquartered Chinese food delivery robot maker. Closed its Series C round of funding at $78 million, according to the company statement on Tuesday. So here comes that one. But interesting to get confirmation that robot food delivery is coming big into China. And that means it will come to the U.S. as well, regulations permitting. Other news from on stage. I do have the entire Twitter feed of stuff that people have shared to go through and cherry pick from, but I just want to do popcorn style for anyone who's burning with one they want to share. And then we've got my regular traditional news feed, which we interestingly, we've not even touched on the Google I/O keynote live stream that we had the companion room for yesterday, which I have to say again was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to the other upcoming live streams that we have. The Facebook event on June 2nd, so just 2 weeks away now. And it would be fantastic if Michelle's able to join us for that to add additional context, and she can mute her mic and laugh herself silly as we comment about all of our misguided thoughts around Facebook during that event, as we did around.
I'll definitely join you and obviously comment on what I have enough context.
That'd be great. So. Yeah. And by the way, just similar to the Google I/O event that we joined together 12 hours ago, which is their annual developer conference, the one coming up in 2 weeks is Facebook's big annual developer conference called F8. And Michelle works at Facebook, so it's going to be fun to watch all their announcements, just like we did yesterday with Google. And now these Google announcements are the top stories today across the tech news universe. And there was a lot of announcements made, but interesting to see which ones caught the most attention. And in the tech news reporting ecosystem, the one that got the most attention is the fact that Android 12, the upcoming update to Android, has a whole new design based on more flexibility and customization. And they call this their Material U system, which has more widgets and buttons and animations and more privacy features, very notably, and much more customizable from a look and feel and color palette scenario, and almost almost, I would say almost too much so. Like you can really make your phone quite ugly if you're not careful very easily. Like you can really customize it. And I often worry when you let users have too much ability to customize their stuff. If they're not good at design, they're going to end up making really painfully ugly stuff, like in the MySpace days, that people's MySpace pages got out of control. For those of us old enough to remember that. And Facebook kind of won because Facebook was clean and whatever, and you couldn't customize the look and feel of your Facebook page, but it kept the experience very homogenous in a nice way, where you went to MySpace and every page was a completely different hodgepodge of crazy looks and feels and colors and shapes. And anyway, the privacy thing at this event was, to me, the most remarkable thing was Apple events. As you know, they really emphasize privacy and your data, and it's safe and it's secure, and it's, all of that song and dance that Apple's been doing now for a few years. And Google notably has not really been that strong on that point until the event yesterday, where that seemed to be kind of one of the marquee messages from the Google camp now, is that they want to be a front runner in privacy and data protection and all of the tools that they're going to give the users around their privacy. One feature in particular that got a lot of attention from the people, our audience that was watching live, was the ability to really see very clearly when your microphone and your camera are being used by apps and which apps are using it, and the ability to just really turn them off very simply with clicks. If you don't want your camera to be used by an app at that moment, or your microphone to be used at that moment by that app. That feature alone, I think, is a game changer for a lot of folks in terms of the feel of being private and secure. And there's a couple of other really interesting features out of the whole, 3-hour keynotes that caught people's attention. One of them was, and Cheryl's favorite one was, the digital car key feature, where your phone can now work as your key to open your car, which they're testing with BMW and several others. And when we talked to people on stage, we had about 30 people on stage, and we went through and you said, what was your favorite feature? Overwhelmingly, the favorite feature that was shown was actually shown last, kind of after the fact, kind of buried in the whole thing, was just a really interesting video where they showed a way for sight impaired people to jog on a jogging path if there's a yellow line, like there often is on bike trails or on walking trails, and your phone can follow the yellow line and tell the jogger that they're staying on the line, and so that people that are sight impaired can go jogging, essentially, to summarize. And it was just, the way it was produced was very moving, and I think it really struck a chord with a lot of people, even though on a technical basis, Google really did showcase a lot of their powerful AI type innovations. One other innovation that came out of yesterday, they talked about how they're really going to start pushing their their Google Watch partnership with Samsung, and unifying that whole ecosystem and all the innovations they're going to do there around health, which they really have to do to even compete with Apple Watch at this point. But there was another one where it's a competitor to Cisco Telepresence, which is an incredibly expensive enterprise solution where you can have virtual conferences and sit across the table from somebody in another part of the world and feel like you're sitting at the same table. And Google's going into this space, and they call it Google's Project Starline. You'll probably see, I'll tweet a video to it right now so that you can see it. It's super impressive, and it's now today on Twitter becoming many people's favorite parts of the event, because of this ability to sit virtually across the table from somebody in another part of the world and feel like you're actually sitting with them in real life. And you'll see what I mean if you watch the video. And that could be fantastic for people who are, forced to be remote due to military service and separate from their families and things like that. And the technology that goes into it is actually very impressive when you look behind the scenes and under the hood of it. So I'll just pause there. If anyone had any thoughts.
Shopify.
Yeah. Oh,
Shopify.
yeah. You, Cal. Amen. So I personally, and maybe other people did too. One of the things we talk about often here is the future of social commerce, and it's coming, and we saw it yesterday but although it was very subtle but powerful in the keynote yesterday. They showed an example of a YouTube video where now, due to Google's improving language algorithms and image recognition algorithms, they can now apply their image recognition algorithms to every photo and every video because they own YouTube. And inside of every YouTube video, essentially, they know all the products in every YouTube video now without the creator of the video tagging those images. So they know that's a bed from IKEA, and they know that's an umbrella from, some other shop. And now essentially those items could be linkable and clickable and purchasable, powered by Shopify. So Shopify is now becoming this incredibly important link in the e-commerce chain to make that social commerce a reality, which is, we already had hints of this because that's who's powering a lot of Facebook's e-commerce. They have, according to Mark Zuckerberg, now millions of shops inside of Facebook that are powered through Shopify, and Spotify as well, when they do e-commerce, will very likely be powered by Shopify. And what's happening, and we were talking about this in the warm-up room, there's now, by the way, a Tech News Around the World warm-up room, thanks to Victoria and Heyman and others. And we were talking about how Shopify, and by the way, I purchased Shopify shares as a result of this news that Google is now using Shopify in this way to power their social e-commerce across the, monetizing YouTube videos in a whole new way. And it'll be very curious to see the creators of those YouTube videos. Do they get a cut of, the sales of the products inside their YouTube videos? That'll be very interesting to see. And, Shopify, there's Amazon. Amazon is the 8,000-pound gorilla of e-commerce, right? Shopify can't really compete head on with Amazon as a destination, as a brand where people go, because they tried initially. But now what they're doing is something super clever, which is empowering the other destinations that people are already going to, like Spotify, like Facebook, like Google, and providing them the e-commerce infrastructure underneath, because honestly, Spotify doesn't want to have to build that, honestly, and Shopify does a great job of it. And they make it plug and play. And now, and you yourself, if Cheryl is starting to produce, Japanese organic, goat milk soap from Tokyo, where is she going to sell it? Most likely she'll create a Shopify shop herself and sell it directly through Shopify. And it goes all the way down to the, mom and pop shop who wants to become an e-commerce shop. That's great. And huge platforms like Facebook and Google and Spotify and everything in between. And if you imagine all of those in aggregate, combining all of them cumulatively, you actually do have something that's equal to Amazon in that way. So it's Shopify is playing a super important role in the future of social commerce in America, and that was sort of formalized and announced in a subtle but powerful way yesterday during the keynote. So my prediction is, this is not financial advice, that Shopify has an incredibly bright future. Let's put it that way. Because now that Google's on board, it will make them the default for every tech platform out there who wants to plug in e-commerce into whatever they're doing, which nearly every social website is going to do at some point. So
a tribute to Canada, right?
Yeah, they are a Canadian company. Fair point, Cal.
Tyler, I have,
yeah.
And Tyler, this is Michelle speaking.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think we might even see like more social commerce iteration, given that there's also privacy. So privacy on the website is going to be bigger, so the pixel will disappear. So I totally agree with you on the fact that they definitely have a great future, because now they're probably the strongest partner of all the advertising platform when it comes to social commerce. And I think it's kind of only the beginning of it.
It's still early days-ish. You're right. It's still got years to run on that growth. Yeah, that's sort of the point. Thank you, Michelle, for that.
Headline Financial Times. I think it's interesting that we talked about a lot of this in the last couple of weeks. So the headline is Irish patient stolen data appears online. So the hackers further demands 20 million ransom by posting healthcare service files and correspondence. So apparently they have leaked, so they hacked 27 files, including personal records of individuals. In terms of the data, 700 gigabytes of data, including patients' home addresses, telephone numbers, as well as staff employment contracts, payroll data, financial statements, all being posted online. So the funny thing is that they say, so there's a statement from the guys who hacked in. They say the good news is that we are businessmen. We want to receive ransom for everything that needs to be kept secret, naming a figure of $19.99 million.
Yeah, this is follow up news to we announced when the hack initially happened with the Irish medical system, and now what the update that Kieran is sharing is that they are essentially now starting to leak some of the data, because the way these hacks work, by the way, and it's just a routine thing now, they go in and they basically take control of the data, all of the data that they can find. They lock it, into a box and say, hey, we've now locked all of your very important data into a box, and if you want your data back, you just got to pay this ransom. And if you don't pay the ransom, we're going to start leaking some of the sensitive data to incentivize you to break out your checkbook and send over those bitcoins. And so that's to Kieran's point. They did this with Apple as well. One of Apple's suppliers was attacked, and they started leaking some of the upcoming schematics of some of the Apple laptops, which, by the way, were announced yesterday. So this was kind of funny. The hackers leaked the schematics of these Apple devices before the devices themselves were announced. This was kind of a first in Apple history, as far as we know, where now it was officially announced yesterday. Apple is coming out with the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. And, oh, by the way, they've got a lot of extra ports, like a SD card is coming back and et cetera. And it's like, yeah, we already knew that from the hackers who leaked the schematics 2 weeks ago.
Tyler, do you think there's like an index amongst these guys, i.e., like complexity of job and social kudos? You know what I mean? Like there's a whole set of people who are working in this hacking space, and you just wonder, is there the social kudos associated with what Kieran just mentioned versus the social kudos associated with
what do you
I don't know.
what do you mean by
right.
social kudos?
Well, let's say Dave owns a hacker company and Tyler owns another hacker company, and you've done a job and you've got a ransom, and you get that ransom, you get some kudos in amongst
So
that.
let me unpack that. Great point, right? So basically what it is, guys, so ransomware as a service, right? So I don't know so the story we talked about earlier in the week about DarkSide. So they're going to become like the cloud service provider for the modern ransomware kind of era that we are heading into, right? So basically how it works is they are providing all the tools you need in order to hack into it. So they provide the company details, where the vulnerabilities, and they provide you all the tools so you can go in, hack in, encrypt it, and and then what they do is they also offer a service. They become the negotiator between, not only they give you the tool, then after that they become a negotiator between you and in this case the hospital, right? So what they do is it's an impressive economic model. So DarkSide takes about 10 to 25% of the ransom payment they pay. So in this case, the $20 million that they are demanding, the attackers, so the DarkSide, which provided all the tools to go and hack them in, they're going to be making $2 million just for facilitating this negotiation in the middle as well. So this is becoming a business. This is where, again, we don't want to go into crypto and all of that stuff. Right? So just think about it in a bigger way. Right? So DarkSide is becoming as a cloud services, and it's really is. And the other thing is another point I think is worth mentioning here is that if you guys notice, whenever there's a hack or a ransom, no one publishes these things because there's about thousands and thousands of hacks are taking place daily. When I worked in banking, constantly, we are deploying millions of dollars and we don't talk publicly about this because we don't want to expose to other, parties to come and hack us even more. So I think this is an area that's worth paying attention to because it can't be done the way it's been done in the past. It has to be a way that everyone be able to share what's going on, and then it becomes a central point. Otherwise, this is a very dangerous space.
Great insights, Kieran. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for the update on the Irish thing. There's apparently, I heard, maybe I misheard, but I was in a room yesterday where they were talking about that the pipeline situation is still an ongoing development. But the one thing is for sure, this hacking business is going to continue unabated, and kind of exponentially. The fire is going to continue to burn out of control for the foreseeable future until kind of either some real policies come into play or some innovations or
innovations. Yeah, the denial of service attacks have been around for such a long time, and now they're just absolutely routine and continuous. But the internet has evolved to handle huge volumes of denial of service attacks and just shrug it off. Services like Cloudflare and many others. So I'm hoping that what it'll do is eventually just drive innovation in security, because some of the attacks are not, as I understand, super sophisticated. I mean, they're pretty sophisticated, but I think the onus should be on the endpoints, the people running the systems, to make sure that they are more resistant to them. And from what I've seen so far, they don't have to move the world to become more resistant to them. They just have to do things sensibly. So I'm hoping it'll drive, the system again is anti-fragile like the rest of the web is, and that this pressure will lead to a stronger end result.
And Ben, this has to happen very quickly. Right? I think Tyler touched upon an interesting point early in the week about the iris. What is the eye? The amount of data that we can collect based on the eye, right? So was it the data captured by the eye trackers? So when we go into this metaverse, AR world, that's again, imagine that the fact that by looking at your eye, you can see all of your other stuff, right? Drugs and body. Imagine how that's going to feel. Imagine if that let's say I'm a young 21-year-old. Taken a drug accidentally, and someone leaked that data, and I applied for an investment banking job, and that's it. My career, before I even start, right? The fact that I made an investment to go to best universities, and the fact that the data got leaked, I will never be hired in anything that's regulated, right? So I think
that's why the trifecta of privacy, security, and self-sovereignty all need to kind of forge forward together. Pretty interesting times.
So
I was going to ask Ben and Kieran, do you think it's possible to hire DarkSide as a corporation or a government to do like security testing? Because that's a way it could go as well, right? If you can start to do a deal with DarkSide and basically say, look, we'll pay you a couple of $1 million a year to vulnerability test our systems.
That's already been happening. A lot of the intelligence
HackerOne.
They've been hiring these smartest. So that's what they do, right? So basically, they do these things so that a lot of these intelligence agencies reach out to them, and they get hired in the private sector. But I think what's going to happen is that just like in the banking industry, 2008, there's a lot of regulations. So what the regulators and the policymakers are realizing is that what we will have is every company probably will have a chief cyber security chief officer or something, and then so they will be an independent body and then they will probably coordinate globally around all of the. So they will be that transparent mechanism at a higher level. I think that's
just as a reference point here. They start young. Okay, so my son is an amazing hacker. He's 16. And he's won all these competitions that the intelligence agency in the UK runs, cyber, whatever it is, different things. And then he got invited to like an elite group of people. It was all online because it's supposed to be normally physical. But he got invited in that. And one of the things that they totally talked to him about is this idea of who you work for, evil or good. And it was like almost like he said, like a third of the thing was about how you think about who you work for. And this is the UK intelligence agency, right? So they're starting very young. They pull him in. I'm assuming they start young because this is the kind of conversation that he's having with me. And it's very, very interesting. And so I'm assuming every country does that. And they're trying to pull people in, and people can work on either side. And my son's kind of going, "Where do I work?" I said, "You know where you're going to work." So it's very, very interesting,
Let
this
me
field.
add that, Cal. So, a blockchain is an amazing technology. So, there was a company, I don't know exactly the name, it's called Polymath. So, basically, there is a bounty, right? So, you can, what you can do within a blockchain is that you can tell all the so the best hackers out there, you can provide a bounty saying that, if you go on, say that you stop a certain level of hack, you get paid, right? So basically, instead of so you reward them for stopping, before the hackers, get in. So there is a way that it can be done, via blockchain as a technology.
Cal, I think we both learned a term yesterday because you tweeted me, you DM'd me about adversarial thinking, right? That's what I was being accused of or praised of. I'm not sure what it was yesterday. Twice, actually, yesterday. People said, I like the adversarial thinking. I'd never heard the term. And then I realized from a security point of view, even if you have a CSSO or whatever, Chief Cyber CCO or whatever, Cybersecurity Officer, CCSO, yeah. They can do things like put in password policies, and you must have all these numbers and letters, and then some idiot goes and writes it on a post-it note and sticks it to their monitor. I really think ultimately the weakness of most of the security systems are at the endpoints these days. It's all very well WhatsApp saying it's end-to-end encrypted, but if you leave your phone unlocked on the table, then people can read your messages. And to secure the endpoints, you've got to educate the users. So I think that teaching and spreading adversarial thinking, what could go wrong, what are the vectors here, even to the common man, to some extent, the average person, I think, needs to have some concept to this. Otherwise, the endpoints will be screwed, and if the endpoints are screwed, the system's screwed. So just a thought. I'm
an advisor to one of these penetration firms where it's called Detectify in Stockholm, and like HackerOne. HackerOne's the biggest player out of Helsinki, where they basically partner with big companies, so many of the biggest companies, and they say, hey, look, we have the largest collection of white hat hackers who will try to hack your systems, and we create with you bug bounties, as they call them. And if they can find different levels of how deep they can get into your system, we'll reward them for different things that they find if they report them, essentially.
Absolutely. That's exactly what.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that. The problem is you as a white hat hacker are competing with thousands of other hackers to penetrate Spotify, for example, and you may get some money for your time or you may not. And the alternative of to go hack something that's much more that to be much more vulnerable, like these medical systems, government medical systems are going to be actually far more hackable, and that data is far more valuable to them because government systems are notoriously a bit, shit, yeah, and medical systems are notoriously shit, and the data is relatively valuable. So a government medical system in Ireland is a prime target. That's why they were hit.
And also small towns.
Yeah.
And also small town governments because they actually, the tax dollars.
Yep. Precisely. So that now you understand why they're attacking who they're attacking. It's not that they have anything against Ireland or whatever. It's just that, it's a government medical system and the data is valuable and it's not like, notice you're not seeing a lot of Israeli places being attacked, by the way. Because they are a little different. That's the home of cybersecurity globally. So anyway, my point is that the data is valuable. They hold the data for ransom, and that you're going to get paid. As a hacker, if you're desperate for money, and that you're perceiving it as your profession, why take the risk of competing with other hackers on penetration tests in these bug bounty, programs on HackerOne or Detectify? Why not, go get the low hanging fruit from the Irish medical system who has, they're going to, and by the way, some of these hackers, they perceive themselves as Robin Hood, where they call themselves hacktivists, where they feel like they're going to stick it to the man and, fuck these oil pipeline companies. They're polluting the planet and CO2. And I'm doing God's work here. Like, fuck these guys and let's shut them down or at least make them pay. And by the way, they said specifically this in the case of the Colonial Pipeline. They said, we're going to take some of this money and donate it to the indigenous people who you stole that land from. And, they feel like they're hacktivists. So that is to Cal's point about who you're going to work for, the good or the bad. Well, guess what? But it's almost like Star Wars, where it becomes a little unclear of who really is the good and the bad, at the end of the day. And like it gets a little.
That's exactly the discussion I got into with my son.
Right.
That's so on, because we started talking about Star Wars, really, literally.
Yep.
It's very interesting.
Yep.
And last night with the congressman, we asked him this question, like, how would he tackle it? The interesting data points that I pulled up were I think the budget for cybersecurity went from apparently from 10 billion to 2 billion. The so what was like, just echoing your point, Tyler, like when you've got like big budgets and you've got like industrial sized scale of people behind this, i.e. Israel, other frames versus like some other places, like that kind of is the battleground, like who's investing in it. And then Cal, to your point, like from what I could get from the guy, congressman guy last night, he was like, it's all about like investing in the talent young, but like I can't help thinking like what quick fixes or what would you do today to stop this thing apart from like deploying the full force of like the intelligence agencies? I don't know. I find it really interesting.
Well, here's where it gets crazy, because traditionally the U.S. does, the war on drugs, the war on this and the war on that. If you try and do the war on, and by the way, America is now starting to realize that isn't perhaps the best strategy, to criminalize everything and, let's make the punishments super severe. And we're realizing that now on the war on drugs and, that whole approach of putting really heavy penalties on the things might not be the best strategy. So would a war on hacking be the right strategy? Or is there some other more modern approach, more Dutch approach, how the Dutch handled drugs, obviously statistically, and Portugal, by the way, is really interesting how they handled drugs was, to decriminalize it. And, I'm muting your mic, Ben. It sounds like you're running somewhere. But time will tell how the policies will come into place, how the incentives, the economists, philosophical balance of what is the right way to disincentivize hackers and incentivize them into good behaviors and disincentivize bad behaviors. It still needs to be worked out. But I think it will be more of a tech-driven solutions ultimately. But the problem is that innovations are happening so wild and fast that we're building stuff, to use an architectural metaphor, without really, we're building these buildings without all of the proper security considerations. And, we're just building, go, go. And now we're realizing, shit, we built it without, securing the basement. And, there's that's how thieves are getting in through the basement. So we need to slow down and start being more careful about how we build these systems to be less penetratable, which Apple is kind of good at that historically, but we need to branch out into everybody. And Shopify, and this is by the way why Shopify is becoming one of the default preferred providers for e-commerce. Why? Because they haven't been hacked. And if you tried to build your whole e-commerce stack, you're going to make a mistake and have a vulnerability and be hackable. And that's why Stripe is becoming the default, credit card settler for a lot of people, because you plug it in and play and they've not been hacked. And guess what? Rather than you having to build it yourself and run the risk of not doing it perfectly and being hacked, well, why not just use Stripe, who are focusing on that and all of the protectionary measures around that. There's a lot of, and keeping it updated. And that's why you see the modularization of the stack of these companies. It's like, if you're going to build something, use Stripe for your credit card processing, use Shopify, who themselves use Stripe, by the way, most likely. Use Shopify if you're going to need the e-commerce. Use Twilio if you need communications, which we, for if you're going to do SMSs and emails, and use maybe SendGrid for your emails and Twilio for your SMSs. And because they've built it, it's secure. More importantly, it's not only does it work, but it's secure. That's the important part. And you're going to continue to see that. And that's the way that the future of most startups know this. The problem is most governments don't when they are building their solutions, like their medical record systems and whatever. They're not employing the same methodologies that the startups are using, but they will. It'll happen.
Remember, Tyler, that with the arrival of AI, this is going to become more of an issue.
Yep.
Most of the sophisticated hackers basically address weaknesses in memory space.
Yep.
So therefore, with machine learning, this can be automated.
Yeah. I want to turn. Let's turn the topic into, because there's so much more news to get into, and in about 30 minutes, we're going to hand it over to Amay and Linda and Luis and Chetna for the crypto news. So with the 30 minutes we have remaining, we've got some interesting stuff to get through. One is that Amazon says, and I just tweeted this out from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account at TNATW, from the Washington Post and Reuters and The Guardian and others, Forbes, CNN, Bloomberg, etc., Amazon says it is extending its ban on selling facial recognition technology to police indefinitely. So they had made this decision, and this announcement came about almost a year ago, where the employees internally said, hey, Amazon, we as employees are going to quit because we don't agree with the philosophy of selling this technology, which we feel is too powerful, facial recognition technology, to police agencies. And if you're going to do that, we together here, Signature Collection, we're going to quit. And so Amazon decided, okay, we're no longer going to sell facial recognition technology to the police. And what the headline is today is they now have made that permanent. And there's another related headline from a few days ago where the Apple employees did a Signature Collection campaign and decided they don't want Antonio to join and run the Apple ads team, who he formerly was the Facebook ad guru. And he had written a book 5 years ago called Chaos Monkeys, New York Times bestseller, where he said some very unkind things about women in in the Bay Area. And so they said, we don't want him working here at Apple campus. So here's our signatures. And Apple said, okay, Antonio, we've decided we don't want you here after all. And that's an ongoing situation. He's going to appear in Twitter Spaces in the next couple of days with Kara Swisher and do a deep dive interview on what happened. But there's now a new announcement in a very similar way. Just coming in, and thank you to whoever sent this to me. Multiple people did, so thanks to all of you who sent this in. Google employees call for Google to support Palestinians and protect anti-Zionist speech. And this is being reported from The Verge, amongst many others. And the point of this is I am very intentionally not taking any sides in Israel and Palestine. However, my point is that Google employees, this is another example where employees are doing signature collections within these big tech companies to essentially force the company to take a stance that they otherwise wouldn't want to have to take. And I'll read the article here. A group of Jewish Google employees is calling on the company to increase its support of Palestinians amid Israel's deadly bombing campaigns in Gaza. The conflict started with Israel's attempt to evict Palestinians from their homes in East Jerusalem. And all of this is debated, of course, on both sides, as Justin masterfully did in his room on this issue of Israel and Palestine. But I'll tweet this out so you can do the deep dive on it. But essentially, members of this organization are calling on Google. These are Google employees, by the way, are calling on Google to support freedom of expression internally, particularly around anti-Zionist viewpoints. Google is the world's largest search engine, and any repression of freedom of expression occurring within the company is a danger not only to Googlers internally, but to all people around the world, they wrote. And here's the letter. Dear Sundar, which is the CEO. Dear Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google and Google executive team, we are a coalition of diverse Jewish and allied Googlers concerned about the internal dialogue around the political and racial violence in Israel and Palestine. We as Jews do not endorse the views of those who have written to you seeking to garner support for exclusively pro-Israel and pro-Zionist actions. We object to the conflation of Israel with the Jewish people, affirm that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, and implore leadership to take the following actions. Number one, heed the request of Palestinian Googlers. Number two, fund relief for Palestinians affected by military violence. Wow, that's kind of a strong ask for Google to fund and any cause anywhere. Like, you're asking your company that they have to provide money to some cause is kind of a strong claim. Or request. Number three, recognize the pain. Number four, protect freedom of speech. Number five, affirm Google's commitment to human rights. Those are all a bit more what you might expect from a letter like this to the CEO. But asking him to fund something is quite strong, whatever the cause might be. But in this case, they're asking him to fund relief for Palestinians. So my point is that these companies themselves, back to the
Charlie,
hacker.
there was one more point.
Yeah.
There was one more point in a longer version of the letter,
Okay.
which was suspend support to Israeli armed forces and suspend any form of services from Google to Israeli armed forces,
Okay.
intelligence services, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the interesting point in all this, of course, is as these companies get so powerful to the size of governments of small countries, and not even maybe even medium-sized countries, that the employees themselves are conflicted. There's internal debates in these companies because they employ tens of thousands of people, and you're going to have to walk on a tightrope as a tech giant when you've got these delicate social issues. And but in Amazon's case, Facebook's case, they told Antonio he's not welcome. In Amazon's case, they're not going to sell facial recognition technology to police stations. In Google's case, well, let's see what Google's response is to these employees making these kind of soft demands. The question is, will they resign if Google doesn't ask what they're asking? That to be determined. So we'll keep you updated to see what Google's response is from their own their Googlers on this particularly hot issue of Palestine and Israel. So it's wild, a whole new aspect of tech. We didn't really have this going back, even a few years ago. This is kind of a new development within tech and Spotify went through it as well. When Joe Rogan, was hired over to Spotify, they paid him, $100 million reportedly to move from YouTube over to Spotify for his podcast. And out of the New York office, because Spotify has offices, their HQ in Stockholm, but they have even a potentially bigger office in New York. And it was apparently the New York office that led this signature collection to say, we don't want Joe Rogan coming over. Well, it's too late. We just paid him $100 million. But, similar to the Antonio coming over to Facebook, and Google and Spotify said, yeah, well, guess what? It's too late. We already paid him the check. Check has been cashed, And now what they're doing is kind of editing and curating and moderating Joe Rogan's content. And they've removed some of his previous podcasts that they found objectionable on Spotify. So it's quite interesting where the ethics and social issues within the company start playing a role in how the companies operate. It's quite interesting.
And there's two
Tyler,
Google
may I
products.
comment? This is Lemise.
Go ahead, Lemise.
Thank you. Yeah, I sent you the article.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
So I don't see why it's a difficult ask. It's a humanitarian crisis after all, and if employees ask their or lobby their employer to send oxygen to India, I see it as pretty much the same thing, really. Or after floods, if you send humanitarian aid, you send humanitarian aid, A. And B, there actually was a tech and startup lab in Gaza that was, destroyed. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for Google to, fund geeks or support geeks in Gaza moving forward one day in the future. I wanted to touch on the censorship, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So we've noticed that lots of the hashtags are misspelled. Yes, activists can actually spell, but they've discovered that if you misspell these hashtags, Gaza under attack, for instance, with double Ks or whatnot, you bypass the algorithm and they trend more. The correctly spelled hashtags aren't trending. So one of the top Palestinian diplomats in the UK at the moment had a meeting with someone who's known to be Facebook's Secretary of State. I think her name's Ebele Okobi. Yeah, Ebele Okobi. He voiced his concern about all the censorship and how certain stories weren't making it and weren't being promoted or weren't appearing in feeds. And for instance, some activists on Instagram have said that Instagram has reached out to them to have meetings on how better they can work together. So that's just like one positive thought. Yeah, I'd have much more to say on this, but I guess I'll stop with the fact that this is a time in history. This is a moment in history. And we have never, as a nation, witnessed anything like it. My father was a refugee of 73 years. He died last year, and he was a refugee when he was just a year and a half old, and he had to leave. And he never returned. So to me, this is a moment in history. I see things changing. The tides are changing. Public opinion is changing. And for the first time, we're getting to describe our narrative. And Palestinians' lives matter. Perhaps the Black Lives Matter movement has paved the way for this. I'm not sure. But it stacks up, and eventually the cycle of violence must end. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's interesting also to see that, people in organizations such as Deutsche Welle and CNN are sharing internal communication where words, everything makes sense. But the one thing that, sort of stops you in your tracks is that words like apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and colonialism shouldn't be used in the newsroom. So this is not, okay. And we're pointing to it. Thank you.
Yeah. And then Hassan just tweeted at me saying that Google historically, going back, has taken political sides on many issues, which is absolutely true. My point is, and just to be clarified, as I said to him, that now that Google is so large and Facebook is so large and Amazon is so large, they employ so many people that they're now going to have employees that on both sides of every issue. Which that was the point of the letter that we were reading. Is Google has a lot of Jewish and Israeli employees, and they have a lot of Palestinian employees. So you can imagine how difficult it is at Google HQ and in the Google Executive Suite around these issues, because they can't satisfy staff on both sides. That it's becoming very heated inside the company, and that's what I'm saying is unprecedented. That's the unique new development, is these companies are getting so big that they're now find themselves walking tightropes on these large social issues. That's my point, and I appreciate what you're saying, Lamis, but I just want to be clear what my initial point is on this. Is we're now reaching a level where tech is so big, where they are having to deal with the fact that they've got employees on both sides of every major issue now. And then they get caught in unique positions they've not historically had to deal with. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the beauty is that they were Jewish employees. Let's remember that. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Yeah. And I commend them.
I think that was a smart way for them to position their letter, of course. And they know that because Sergey Brin himself is Jewish. So it's like, they know they need to be smart about how to position that. And and Googlers are notoriously very smart people. So I agree. I think that was a very smart way to frame it. Yeah, go ahead, Heyman.
Also an important tool that a lot of the conflict researchers use, which is Google Maps. And there has been a concern over time, especially with recent images of the Gaza area or conflict areas, even in Myanmar.
There was an article,
it was difficult to
about the fidelity of the satellite images in certain areas.
There was a reason for it, though, because the U.S. regulations prevented it for 20 years, apparently, and only last year they allowed it to be more high definition.
It gets far more interesting than that. The actual lines on Google Maps change depending on which country you're doing the searches from. With regard to the West Bank, for example, and with regard to many, not at all unique to Israel, with regard to Pakistan and India, because those borders
I'm going to use my VPN.
Oh, yeah, that's how it was discovered. Is depending on which country you log in from, the border changes on Google Maps because they have to appease both governments. That's sort of the point. Yeah,
that's true. And there was a petition, and their aim was to collect 3 million signatures to ask Google to change that, and I think they hit the target last night.
Yeah, it's a wild, but you can imagine. That's why when we were talking about these hashtag blocking, which you brought up as well, Lamis, about these hashtag filters, and it's forcing people to, intentionally misspell to get around the hashtag filters. And the essence of that, and Michelle really helped us understand, the semi-autonomous nature of these things that then get escalated to, higher up. And as soon as the press gets involved, and it's like the press is like, hey, it looks like Facebook or the social media networks are blocking this hashtag, and then next thing you know, the company has to come out and say, sorry, that was an automated filter, we've restored all those tweets. And it's an interesting kind of cat and mouse game, right? I imagine there's more in that lemon to squeeze to really figure out the real essence of what's really going on in those situations. More articles to jump into. I've got more to share, but I just want to make sure we have more time for everyone to share from their part of the world professionally or geographically. A lot of raised hands. I'm sorry, folks. I'm using Club Deck, by the way, which I love. One of the downsides is when there's people raising their hands, I don't see them because they're below my screen when we have more than like 10 people on stage. So if I don't scroll down, I don't see people raising their hands. So sorry, I missed you, Joaquin and Arash and Linda and others. But go ahead and welcome back. Joaquin, something you wanted to share?
Oh, no, it was already discussed.
Okay.
Thank you, though, Tyler.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the other headlines going around the tech sphere today, NVIDIA extends its crypto mining limits to newly manufactured stuff. And as you know, NVIDIA's technologies are fundamental to they have the optimized processors that do a lot of the crypto mining. And then, as we mentioned yesterday in the other time zone, Apple is planning new MacBook Pros, MacBook Airs, Mac Pros, Mac Minis, larger iMacs, and faster CPUs with more in and out ports. And this is all coming as soon as this summer. And what is interesting about the timing of this, of course, is they announced this hours before Google's annual keynote event, where Google makes their announcements. And I have to acknowledge it's part to the genius of the Apple PR team to flood the tech news zone with hot, juicy, rumorish news hours before Google's about to make their announcements. And it's fun to watch these PR teams battle each other for the headline space. Because there's only so much news people can handle in one day. And then here it is finally getting through now. Google teams with Shopify to let Shopify's 1.7 million merchants easily sign up to have their products appear across YouTube, Search, Maps, Image, and Lens. Oh man, it's better than I thought. Wow. So more context around this social commerce thing. So what happened is Google showed in their keynote that YouTube is, of course, filled with all of those videos of millions and millions, hundreds of millions of videos, have products in those videos that the creator isn't even really conscious of. But the desk lamp in the video, or the bed in the background, or the shoes on the person can essentially be auto-recognized through the image recognition algorithms and link to sellers who have them for sale. And the question we asked during the live stream, I very specifically asked, is who's fulfilling that? Where's the chain? Who's selling it? Who am I buying it from? Who's fulfilling it? How's it getting to my door? Who's getting paid along the way? And now that's been answered. So TechCrunch is reporting that Shopify, because it was announced that Shopify is the partner, but we weren't sure what that meant exactly. It answered part of the question, but not all of it. So what it says is Shopify has 1.7 merchants, like Cheryl, who sells her organic goat milk soap from Tokyo. And so it says Shopify's 1.7 merchants can now sign up to have their products appear across YouTube and Google Search and Google Maps and Google Images. And what that means is when there's a YouTube video that shows a pair of shoes, if you have those shoes for sale on Shopify already as an e-commerce merchant, you can now say, yeah, hey, Google, if somebody sees those shoes for sale on YouTube, I got them for sale. Yeah, sure, send them to me. Well, my God, why wouldn't you do this? You're now going to be flooded with additional inbound people who saw these shoes on YouTube, and they're now going to come buy them from your store. So this is truly fantastic. If you are,
I see this as a very, very big opportunity for those YouTubers or influencers with very big following, because right now they can actually do their own private label.
No, it's not. No, it's not at all. What, according to this, the opportunity is for people who have Shopify stores with those shoes in those stores. If you are a YouTuber and you don't have a Shopify store for those shoes in your video, you get absolutely zero. The person who benefits is whoever is the Shopify account who has those shoes for sale. So you as a YouTuber, if you want to monetize the products in your YouTube videos, need to now take the extra step of making a Shopify store and putting those shoes in your video in your Shopify store.
Yeah, I know. That's why I say, instead of selling other people's product, if they are so famous that they have a big following, they can actually have their own private label.
Of course they can do that, but they won't make any money from it unless they control the Shopify store or do some partnership themselves with the Shopify store. The person who's going to monetize is the Shopify store owner, not the YouTuber.
I think Cheryl's, I'm kind of gelling with Cheryl's point here, if I can understand it just a little bit. Because what's interesting, let's say, I'll take consumer electronics as a thing that I understand. The big guys have the brands. Obviously, Apple, Beats or whatever, right? The brand is. But increasingly, if you are an influencer and you can actually, the supply chains are having run the own label business out of China, the supply chains are just getting so cool for you to be able to design and produce a really good quality product. I'm not saying, you're an Apple Watch kind of level, but other things. And then if you're an influencer, right, you can now get that whole supply chain working. You can build in your Shopify, connections, right? Is that where you're going, Cheryl?
Just like the lipstick man, right now he's promoting others' products. He's getting only a margin. But what if one day that he can actually directly work with the factory to have his own private label? Just imagine, then the margin will be much higher instead of just getting a commission. If he's really, really that influence, to have such a big influence,
yeah,
that's what I'm
but
saying.
That's not really related to the technology or the article. I mean, that's just business, and people have been teaching that in business schools.
I'm a businesswoman.
Yeah, that's just every MBA program for the last 50 years has been saying exactly that. This what I'm talking about is the technology and how the links will be made. Where does the hyperlink go, and who gets the money for the click, and whose wallet does the money go into? That's what I'm focused on, because if a YouTube creator, a content creator, if we're going to have this creator economy, then the person who makes the video ideally would monetize the objects in their video, right? Like I've got a bunch of products, and now you're going to start seeing YouTubers with thousands of products sitting behind them as they tell stories, whatever they're doing, because now all those products in the view in the background of the screen are now clickable and purchasable. But according to this, that YouTuber might not get any bit of that money, because that item is clickable and buyable. It will take you to a Shopify store where a different person who owns that Shopify store is going to sell it to, and they get all that money.
There is always affiliate marketing, meaning to say that they'll get a code. If anybody use their code, they actually get a commission. So that's what's happening now. But the thing is, if it's only constrained to Shopify now, it may not be a good idea for them, because prior to this, they can actually have different affiliate links to promotion code for many platforms, right?
Right, but in this case, the affiliate is Google itself. Google puts the link from the product to Shopify. Google gets a little piece. The Shopify store sells something. The creator gets nothing. This is my point, Cheryl.
Tyler, what about
actually what you can do is add a UTM tag from Google, and this is how you get the affiliate commission. Out of this. Just adding that to the link.
Yeah, here's what's going on today. Every YouTuber now understands that they have products in their videos. They, in the description of their videos, put links to Amazon where you can buy that product, and they get paid an affiliate for that. That's how it works today in YouTube. and they're sending all the traffic to Amazon, and Amazon's getting all the sales, and the content creator, the YouTube creator, is getting a kickback when people click those links and buy those products. That's how it works today. What I'm saying is the new paradigm with Google is Google's partnering with Shopify to take away people going to Amazon. Now people are going to be sent to Spotify because it's actually a very small percentage of YouTube creators that are smart enough to put links to the Amazon products that are featured in their videos, by the way, like 0.0001%. But now every YouTube video that was ever made can have products that are, every product and every video that ever existed will now have products that are purchasable. And those purchases are not going to happen on Amazon. They're going to happen on Spotify by the people who have those products in their stores now today in Shopify. That's my point. The creators themselves of the YouTube videos don't have those stores set up 99.9999999% of the time. So if you, as a content creator, want to monetize the products in your videos, you need to set up a Shopify account and link your and then let Google know, hey, it's my video, please. It's not known yet what if you have 20 Shopify shops all selling the same shoes that are seen in the YouTube video? Which Shopify shop gets shown? All 20 of them? And then the consumer decides which shop they want to buy it from? Probably. Should the content creator of the video be featured as one of those shops? And how do they become one of those shops? Or is Google going to share part of the commission to the content creator? They might. But I just tweeted the article, so you can deep dive on it and do that. But what I'm saying is this is the essence of the creator economy. Is obviously Google now is going to get a piece. It used to be Amazon benefited greatly from when the creator included links to their products, and the creator themselves benefited by affiliate. Now that's being changed. Now Google obviously is going to get a cut of sending the YouTube viewer to Shopify. The Shopify store, Shopify is going to get a piece. The Shopify store owner is going to get a piece. Google's going to get a piece for sending them there. But will the content creator themselves get a piece? That, to me, is the essence of the key question, because that piece is the creator economy.
Right now, the business model of Shopify is monthly subscription based, right? I don't think they take a percentage of the commission, do they? Unless, of course, they use a Shopify payment system.
I'm reading the article because we don't know yet. Nobody knows what's going to happen.
No, because
that is the key
I've
question.
I've created some Shopify site for my clients before, so I kind of understand
the
business model.
Because it applies.
The key question I just want to try and that's so helpful, Tyler. Just a little bit, because this is the key question is that it comes, if I go back to it, it's still at some level there's not the content creator will now have to whichever way it works, but will customer experience will matter in the end of the day, because it'll come out in the reviews, right? So whichever shop they pick, I don't know how the mechanics would work, because but whichever shop, but the customer experience will matter, right? And so when they set up these shops, it's just going to raise the customer. And at the moment, one of the issues with Amazon is that the non-Amazon, like direct from Amazon, from their warehouse, etc., it's not a great experience, and it's getting worse and worse. I don't know if people are tracking that, but the third party sales, for some reason they're losing a lot of traction on that. And my personal experience as a customer has been really bad when I buy it from these stores within Amazon, and the reviews are not trusted that much. So this opens up the game, and I think it's well articulated, the questions you're talking about there, Tyler. And I'm sure we'll debate it over the next few months.
Because there are, every YouTube video that was ever produced, will those YouTube video creators from 10 years ago now start receiving checks from Google saying, oh, you made a video 10 years ago and it featured an umbrella and somebody clicked on that umbrella and bought it on Shopify. Here's a check for you. Or by the way, you had 50,000 videos. Oh, by the way, now you're just going to start getting checks for, your 5,000 videos in your account. Are they going to do that retroactively? Why would they do that?
No, they'll pay for this YouTube storage fees, right? But curious also, I think Google and Shopify should pay me for this idea, but based on geolocation, could they not alter those images for an endemic product? Like if Coke is not available in that country, they could actually supplant like an image of another product that's available in that country and sell.
I doubt they'll do that at this point. But anyway, I'll tweet the article out, and it's going to be super interesting to see how this develops, because my point is the content creator themselves who made the YouTube video, if they do monetize as part of people buying the products in their auto magically, then you're going to see it becomes a new career for millions and millions and millions of people, essentially, where they will become, the idea of being, and because, by the way, this not only works on YouTube, per the headline I just tweeted, it works on all Google Photos. You better believe Facebook's bringing it to Instagram, and every product and every Instagram photo will be linked to a Shopify account. But who's getting that money again? The Instagrammer?
Yep.
Because if they
I just want to say, if the YouTuber really want to make money, they have to have their own Shopify shop.
We don't know.
If not, I mean, that's the only way they can make money. Because if not, because they are influencers, so by right they should be impartial. That's why their followers listen to them, right? But if you just route them to only one other merchant shop,
we don't know, because if you're in Tokyo watching that video, they're likely you'll go to the Shopify page. They're probably going to feature the shop that's closest to you, because these are small shops. So if there's someone in Tokyo selling the shoes that you want, you're not going to buy it from somebody in South Africa, because it'll take 6 months to travel.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. Yeah, we'll see.
So it doesn't matter. What if the creator of the video is in South Africa and they're wearing shoes that you want to buy in Tokyo, but there's a Shopify shop that sells those shoes in Tokyo? Well, guess which shop you're going to buy it from? The shop in Tokyo, because you're going to get those shoes in an hour rather than 6 months from now. So that's my point, is the creator has his own store in South Africa, but you're
local warehousing.
You're not going to buy it from the creator.
Yes.
So as the economics of this become super important, and I really hope that the creators get a piece of the sale, even if they're not selling, if it's not their Shopify store. That's the point.
We're gonna have cloud warehouses, Tyler.
Yeah.
You're gonna have 3D printers printing Nike shoes for you in every city. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So are we? Yeah, we're 2 minutes away, and I believe Amay and others have a room coming up. Has Amay jumped out to start her room? Is it running already? That's the question. Final thoughts. We got some raised hands here. Let's welcome Jordan and Joanne and Magda. And oh Jesus, I'm sorry, everybody. Carl and Linda, everyone. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry.
Hey Tyler,
hey.
I heard you say it as I left quietly to go try and open the room. But morning, everyone.
Hey,
How is everyone?
You have a room starting in a few minutes, right?
Yeah, and basically, one of the things that's going to be very interesting is something that Donna talked about yesterday. Is going to be this tsunami of broadcast media companies that are going to come into this space because Sony just announced it took a patent in the blockchain in Bitcoin for e-gambling.
Okay.
So it's going to be very interesting. They have a patent now.
Interesting. And you're gonna you can deep dive on that.
And my dog apparently agrees with me.
Okay, go ahead and get your room started, and we're gonna head over there shortly. We're just gonna run through, make sure everyone on stage has a chance to share their headlines, and I'm gonna save the rest of my headlines for when we meet again later today, 7 hours from now.
Monica, you have anything to share today from India? Okay, he's not there.
Okay, Harry,
I make a comment on the YouTube thing.
Go ahead, Carl.
Oh, go ahead, Carl. Yeah, super interesting everything you said, Tyler. It seems to me that you're going to YouTube is going to want to maximize the efficacy of this, and to do
Jordan,
that, it's not just.
Could you turn your mic off just a little bit? I think you may have your mic on, Jordan.
Yeah, somebody's chopping vegetables. To do this, they're not just going to want to do any old objects and whatnot. They're really going to want to push the things that are trending right now. They want the content creators to prioritize the things that are selling well right now. So that means you're going to have some sort of thing. I can see some sort of thing coming in where after your video has been up for a certain time, there's some sort of metric, KPI, that tells you how much money you potentially could have made maybe off of certain items. if you had set up a Shopify and whatnot. But this works the other way around as well, because not only like are they monetizing the items that are in the videos and going directly to the Shopify owner, and I kind of agree with you, Tyler. I don't think necessarily YouTube is out of the goodness of their heart is going to give a cut to the content creator, because that's a cut to the content creator and then a cut to Shopify, and it's too many middlemen. But what they can do is they can say, hey, look, these items are popular. Why don't you get them? Why don't you put them in your video? They're going to have all of this data showing which items are the most popular, and instead actually contact these creators and say, hey, you run a gaming channel. These items sell really well on a gaming channel. Why don't you get some of them? Why don't you put them in the video? Here's the evidence of what this could potentially do. And so they get the advertising money, as it were, for having them in the video. And then at the point of sale, Google gets to keep all of that cut, whatever they take from Shopify.
Just to kind of add on that, if it's okay, quickly. I think that's going to change the relationship influencers have with their audiences, because there's already been this whole kind of, are you actually saying this because you use the product, or are you saying this because you're being paid to? And I think this may actually move influencers more to Patreon, where they're doing reviews, but they're not mentioning the name of the product or showing it. And then it becomes, if you want to actually know the product I trust, join my Patreon to find out, because they're not given the control. If it's just going to be in the video and you're going to get it from anywhere. Like, not to bring up an old one, but there was a whole Pablo Escobar phone that a YouTuber did a review on. He was saying it was terrible. But if now everyone's going to start saying, okay, go buy this phone because here we have selling it, it's going to change the relationship audiences have with YouTubers. So I think it might be dangerous.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think maybe YouTubers might start backing products that they really do believe in, and get paid more to do that.
They won't necessarily have control. If the product's in the video and that's going to be recommended from it being in the video.
But if the YouTuber only puts products in his video that he believes in, so they can decide what is in their video.
I think it's going to be more like the product placements for movies. Like I think that's the whole thing. Like whoever throws the most money at the biggest YouTuber, so it's less authentic. So I agree with.
It's all going to be automated, and there's already millions of videos of unboxings of every product that you can ever imagine, and every tech reviewer of every consumer electronics device, where it's their job to review every piece of hardware that every tech hardware manufacturer makes. Their channel of millions of followers is based on them reviewing all 50,000 phones every day. So they're not just going to do the one phone. Their entire account is based on reviewing every phone. That's the whole purpose of their account. So they're not going to cannibalize their entire account just to do one video a year when they're used to doing 5,000 videos a year for the 5,000 phones.
Yeah, but then won't the producers still then pay them to review their product, whether it's a good review or not? It'd still be the same review, but they get paid now by the gamers or the whoever's producing the product to review that product.
The reviewers very clearly cannot be paid by the hardware manufacturers. If they did that, their account would be canceled immediately.
Oh yeah, and that changes the relationship completely, because if someone's reviewing a product, a lot of the people that follow these like Unbox Therapy and all these channels, they're buying stuff based on the recommendations. And if they're getting recommended things that the YouTuber is saying is not good, they're going to come back to the YouTuber, not to YouTube, and say, hey, I bought this because it was advertised under your video. So I assumed that it was good because you only say things are good. You only link things that are good. So that influencer-viewer relationship is going to be really risky.
Yeah, but it's going to be changed, isn't it? Because now it's gone from an active thing to a passive thing. Because the active thing at the moment is when you're saying, hi, I'm endorsing this thing. Now what you're doing is you're just saying, hey, I like this damned lamp. I'm going to stick the lamp in the background. It's a terrible lamp. I'm not telling you to buy it, but I'm going to stick the lamp in the background. Oh, also, by the way, I have a Shopify link to this. Right. So
we're just going around in circles, and we don't know. We will know soon because the headlines will come out precisely how
let's wait and see
how the money changes hands. Yeah, I want to make sure. Yes, Nicholas.
Just one interjection here. The discussion is very focused on influencers, but big media also has affiliate revenues as a as an important part of their media, of their business model.
The product placements.
New York Times bought the Wirecutter. CNET does all kinds of tech reviews, and they're all affiliate linked.
So we're going to pause that whole thread because it will go on for 5 hours because we're ending this room in 3 minutes. No, please, we're not talking about it anymore. So
another topic.
I have a completely
different
perspective.
We have a process, and I need everyone to cool down. Put their big pants on for a second. Just calm the hell down for a second, so we can finish this room. We have to do it in an orderly way. But please.
Meg is a digital marketing expert, by the way. I'm just looking at her profile.
Yeah, we are ending the room in 3 minutes.
Anyone who speaks out of order, Cheryl, have fun in the audience. So. Anyone who speaks out of turn.
Are you Mo?
Yeah. There you go. Down to the audience, to you, Cheryl. So anyone who speaks out of turn, like Cheryl just did, will be moved to the audience, like Cheryl just was. So, Monica, do you have something to share? No. Okay. Flash your mics if you have something to share, and we will go in a very nice order and finish this room in the most efficient time possible. Magda, it's a new headline. We're not talking about social commerce in any capacity. You have a new headline to share?
No, I wanted to comment on
then you can come back tomorrow and we will comment on that. Mabwana, you have a headline to share?
South African news, actually fintech related. And one from Ethiopia, which was pretty quiet when it comes to stuff, but they just launched the mobile money service Telebur, which got 1 million users.
Mabwana, unfortunately, hey, I'm very sorry. Your audio quality is such that we can't make out what you're saying exactly. I'll try to circle back to you after we circle through. Flash your mics if you have a headline to share. Going once, going twice. Mabwana, give it one more try.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, news out of Ethiopia, the state government Selco launched Telebur. Burr is the currency of Ethiopia.
It's still not. We're picking up half of what you're saying. Can anyone else hear what he's saying? No. Okay. So.
Oh, sorry. I'll circle back tomorrow.
Okay, we'll do it tomorrow, and we will pick up the. By the way, this e-commerce conversation. The good news is the sun is actually. I have a headline here just breaking from CNN. The sun is going to come up tomorrow, and that gives us another chance to talk about e-commerce again. It's going to be fantastic, and apparently the sun's going to come up every day henceforward, and we will be talking about social commerce with Magda and everyone on stage and Monica endlessly for many days to come. That you can almost bet on that. So thank you for the conversation, and sorry to everyone else who has their hands raised, Sam and Reuven and Lawrence and Linda. We are now 8 minutes over because we were supposed to end 8 minutes ago. And we're now going to head over to the crypto newsroom for those who want to do the deep dive with Ame on that. We are meeting here again in just less than 7 hours. And I promise you then we will talk about social commerce. And I know, Magda, you had a point that you wanted to share about that because that's your background. And we look forward to what your thoughts on that. We will bring up the issue again. Hopefully there'll be more headlines and more clarity around exactly what the partnership and the nature of Google and Shopify. It's fascinating. But when the stock market opens, it'll be interesting to see how the market is reacting to it as well. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next